Just when you think it's safe to let your guard down while traveling back and forth to foreign countries, you quickly realize that it's not. This was the case for U.S. native Brittney Griner, who learned the trouble that can come from being in a country like Russia when they're facing opposition with your homeland. For many years, Griner, a WNBA player, has played for a Russian basketball club, traveling there to play in the off-season. But in February this year, she was arrested. What were the charges, you might wonder? Well, the airport officials in Moscow claimed that she was smuggling drugs after they found some cannabis oil in her travel bag. She tried to explain that she accidentally packed it in a rush, but the jury wasn't having it. So the basketball player was punished with a 9-year prison term in August. She even tried to appeal to the court, but it didn't go in her favor. So in mid-November, she was taken to Mordovia. Her time in the Russian prison was very hard, especially because she wasn't in her country and couldn't cope with the living conditions there. She needed to be let out, but Russian security had one condition. In this video, we will be talking about how Russia asked that a harmless sportswoman be released in place of the Merchant of Death. This controversial trade leaves some happy for Brittney's release and others highly upset about the possible dangers this could cause. You might have heard that Viktor Bout, a Russian arms dealer known as the Merchant of Death, was swapped for Brittney Griner. Well, it's true. In 2008, a Russian businessman whose life was the sole inspiration for a Hollywood movie, Lord of War, was arrested by U.S. drug enforcement agents in Thailand amid a sting operation. After 2-year-long court proceedings, Bout was handed over to the U.S. Throughout this time, he kept on saying that he was innocent. When Jill Doherty from CNN asked about some of the allegations against him, like if he was paid in blood diamonds after supplying rivals in Africa, or if he sold arms to Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, he blatantly denied everything. It's a false allegation and it's a lie. I've never touched diamonds in my life, and I'm not a diamond guy, and I don't want that business. I'm not afraid. I didn't do anything in my life I should be afraid of. If only Bout was sensitive enough to be afraid of the terrifying U.S. government. He claimed that he merely served as a logistics provider while running legal enterprises, but the U.S. apparently wasn't having it. They had him incarcerated for 25 years for conspiring to kill Americans, buy and sell anti-aircraft missiles, and give financial assistance to a terrorist group. The U.S. government doesn't joke with its citizens. He should have known better. Luckily for his wife and daughter, Bout was released last Thursday because the U.S. agreed to Russia's terms. The exchange of the famous WNBA star Brittney Griner for a grotesque arms dealer Viktor Bout was one extremely rare instance of effective diplomacy between Moscow and Washington at a time when their ties had soured due to the conflict in Ukraine. After the exchange at the Abu Dhabi airport, Bout returned to Russia. Later, Bout was shown strolling on an Abu Dhabi runway, boarding a jet and sitting down on it before it landed in Moscow on Russian official television. The transfer will likely bring back memories for many people of spy exchanges from the Soviet era, which is a more pleasant memory of that period than the nuclear stalemate, which President Joe Biden recently described as the world's most hazardous situation since the Cuban Missile Crisis. As Russia and the West face what many perceive to be a new Cold War, analysts say that the fact that the Biden administration and the Kremlin were still able to hold such conversations was a remarkably encouraging indication. What do you think? Could there really be a Cold War? Many people don't agree with Biden's decision. Some think that this is simply outrageous because since the Cold War ended down to the day of his arrest, Bout openly ignored every single arms embargo that happened. Whether it is Afghanistan, Liberia, Congo, Libya, or even Sierra Leone, as long as there was a warlord in need of weapons to destroy their enemies, even if the enemies were a suffering population, Bout was always there to gather gold from the bloodshed. So why in the world would anyone release such a terrible criminal and trade a 25-year jail term for a basic 9-year prison term? If you're one of the people that sees this trade as an outrageous flaw, you're not alone. The Biden administration is already receiving a whiplash of criticism for returning Viktor Bout. Some Republicans have disapproved of the agreement. Kevin McCarthy, the Californian House Minority Leader, claimed the exchange endangers American lives, especially because it is a gift to Vladimir Putin. Concerns were raised by certain well-known senators regarding the prisoner swap Biden approved to ensure Griner's release. Robert Menendez, a Democrat from New Jersey who serves as the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, claims that Viktor Bout, the so-called Merchant of Death, and other terrorists like the Russian government cannot be compared to the Brittney Griners of the world. Maybe Robert Menendez makes a valid point. Should people like Brittney Griner be left to serve what some may deem as an outrageous prison sentence when the U.S. government has the means to get her released? Some may feel if you do the crime, you should do the time. But did Brittney Griner do the crime? For all we know, she could have simply been a target used by the Russian government to facilitate the trade of Viktor Bout. The world may never know. We cannot deny that Bout's release back into society is a deeply troubling decision. Menendez stated that we need to stop allowing autocratic and rogue regimes to use Americans as negotiating chips abroad, and we need to do a better job of discouraging Americans from visiting countries like Russia, where they are the main targets for this kind of wrongful detention, especially with the recent happenings. We still haven't been able to get Whalen out now. Griner? Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, warned that this exchange might create a hazardous precedent in the future. However, he didn't blame the administration for bringing Griner home. Instead, he told reporters he was concerned Bout's release may inspire other hostile nations to abduct Americans abroad. Rocks may be thrown toward individuals with ease. Though it is, his opinion might be valid. The worry is that this will set an example where any ill-willed party will just grab an American for negotiating power. He believes you definitely shouldn't be released until you absolutely have to when your nickname is the Merchant of Death. That is the issue with these types of agreements. Many are happy that she is returning home, but can the U.S. step it up by bringing Whalen home and put a complete stop to these situations? Paul Whalen is another American who the State Department has deemed to be wrongfully detained. Despite Biden's claim that the United States will never give up on securing his release, Whalen was not included in the swap. So the question lingers, was the U.S. administration's decision really a painstaking one? We are aware that the Russian government is not the kind that throws gifts and hands out candies, and truth be told, the option was one or none. Still, should the one have been Griner, who just received the 9-year term sentence in February, or Whalen, who was wrongfully detained and sentenced to 16 years in prison in a trial that U.S. officials have outrightly called unfair? Do you think the U.S. government made a huge mistake by agreeing to the trade at all? Let us know what you think in the comments below.